Real swallowed Remax yesterday morning. By last night, the big three of U.S. real estate had a new shape: Compass, Keller Williams, Real. Brokers in Texas just appealed the NAR mandatory membership rule on the same day EXP moved to reincorporate there. The Milwaukee brokerage owner accused of running drugs through 150 rentals is sitting in a federal cell tonight. The credit score just opened for a chunk of buyers who did not qualify last cycle. The administration is putting LA wildfire mortgage recovery under a microscope. And Nexa Lending and Loan Depot are throwing punches over trade secrets. Welcome to My Real Estate Show Unfiltered. So our first topic is a continuation of what we were talking about yesterday, which I totally forgot we were supposed to introduce ourselves. I don't have that on the outline. Remind me to put that on the outline tomorrow, Brian. Our first topic is the big three is born. Real Remax CEOs talk strategy 24 hours after the $880 million deal. Oh, it did put my intro under this. I'm Sandi Burnett, CEO of My Real Estate Company, a nationally expanding brokerage Holly and I built around standards, ownership, and accountability. The things we found missing the last time we worked under someone else's roof.
I'm Josh Reese. I'm the Director of Advancement, and I met Sandi Lynn because her business partner threatened to burn my house down.
And we are joined by producer Brian, who I served with in the Marines over 20 years ago. And then, what else should we say, Brian?
I mean, I would bother. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So just make a note, Brian, that I need to break out the introduction among whatever else went wrong on my end. Okay. So the morning after Real Brokerage agreed to acquire Remax Holdings for roughly $880 million, Tamir Poleg and Eric Carlson sat for joint press. Inman's Taylor Anderson ran with Remax acquisition. Real Brokerage would gain status among real estate's big three overnight. So that's where that big three comment came from in our headline. Citing T360 data from the Real Estate Almanac. There were also published, there was a published joint CEO interview. Scale will be increasingly important. Housing Wire's Jonathan Delosier filed off to the races. I mean, so there's been all kinds of reels, articles, everything. Both Real and KW together would still trail Compass on every metric. I found that fascinating. Remax U.S. agents count, sides, and volumes have all declined for the past 3 years. And that's the thing that they brag about. They're like, yeah, but our agents' production. So Real actually has been the fastest growing major brand since 2022. I know that you had some takes on this, Josh. We were watching both companies' stock yesterday, all kinds of things. I'm interested in your thoughts on, day two of this acquisition.
So I think it was interesting. Real stock didn't really like the acquisition news, while Remax's stock did. I think a lot of that is just connected to the fact that it sounds like, from what we've been told, this is a big debt deal for Real. They're not coming at it with cash. I've heard numbers of around 500 million of the 880 are going to be financed. And so I think, the investors are a little bit concerned. The markets are a little bit concerned when a company takes on that kind of debt. So it will be interesting to see what happens with it long term. But, it's not, to me, it's not that surprising to see that. But the other interesting thing too about this is the difference between the two companies and their stock prices. I mean, Real is hovering around, anywhere between $2 and $3 any given day. And I believe Remax is hovering around $15 to $16 a share. So it'll be interesting to see how this acquisition all comes together. And I'm curious to see too where the investors really stand on if they're really behind this. I think especially Real's investors, I think there's going to be some backlash on this. I don't think they're going to like it very much. So
I find it so interesting that the agents at Real all seem like, hey, welcome to the family, acting like they were in on this big secret the whole time. I actually saw Holly Brink made a comment on somebody's LinkedIn status when they were kind of talking about it. She's like, oh, I wonder who got all these agents in their downline, And so it is kind of like that. Imagine you're a Remax agent that was so against being at an MLM. And overnight, the acquisition hasn't completely finalized, but overnight you're told, well, surprise, you're in a network marketing company.
Well, and I think it also shows too the level of devotion that some of these Real agents have to their brokerage, which I find fascinating because you've seen the same thing with EXP and some of the other MLM style brokerages where it's almost like this cult following. And to me, as a business owner, I don't really like it. And it's because they spend all this time building up the brokerage's brand with, all the stuff about how good their brokerage is, but they're not building their personal brand. And that's one thing that I think we're at risk of with all these acquisitions happening is, agents losing the ability to actually own their own business and have their own brand because they're so tied into the brokerage. And I just want to say, at the end of the day, and this isn't every brokerage or every broker, but at the end of the day, these people don't care about you as an agent. And there's very few brokerages, especially with an MLM model, that the people at the top care about the people at the bottom. But what we're seeing is a lot of these people, and most of them are recruiters that are really doing this, but they're, really talking this up like it's, this huge thing and everything, which it's not small, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think the industry was poised to change anyways. There was something that was going to happen, and if it wasn't this, it was going to be something else. But it's crazy to see how quick, everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and it was like this welcoming committee on social media of, join the family and everything.
Our blended family. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and that's the problem I see with
family. That's like a cuss word. As far as Holly and I are concerned, I think it's manipulative to tell a bunch of people you're in business with that they're your family. I don't know about you guys, but I don't make my family pay me annually.
So, yeah.
Or monthly.
Yeah, my family pays dues every month, so, but...
And I think that there's also something to be said about that because, we have a very tight culture where we're at, but I think it's because we don't blow smoke up everybody's asses and use words like family, right? So I see the word 2H again. It just cracks me up. I'm 99% sure that they mean second half 2026. It says, watch what happens to these franchisee renewals. A lot of them are in their option periods. So let's see what happens in these renewals. Let's watch what happens in the next 30 to 60 days from now, what these Remax franchisees are doing. I also want to put it out there, guys. If you are a Remax agent or a franchise owner at Remax, and you found out about this acquisition on the news like the rest of us did, we want to talk to you. We want to get your perspective. If you want to come on the show, let's chat. I've been watching a lot of reels, and it's almost like everybody's afraid to have an opinion. They're like, wow, this is really interesting. Not sure what to think. I'll keep you all posted. And I'm like, really? Like, do you not have a backbone? Like, nobody has a backbone anymore. So I want to know, like, if you actually have perspective, I don't care which side it's on, but have some fucking conviction, and we'd be happy to have you on the show. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, there's a lot of groupthink going on right now with this. And it's kind of amazing to me because it just shows the level of, I don't want to say how much it's like a cult, but it's like a cult. Let's be real now, you know.
It's that teal Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you know, the amount of groupthink going on. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and I'm going to kind of go in a different direction, Sandy Lynn, so here we go. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and I thought about this last night, is with the Compass acquisition, they held that really close to the vest for a long, long time. And by the time it was announced, it was almost finalized. It was announced.
There was nothing anybody could do about it.
No.
But there's a lot that can be done about this prior to it being finalized.
The interesting thing about this, and it's never been said publicly, but I really truly believe the reason that Robert Reffkin kept that so tight-lipped, he was really afraid of regulatory bodies blocking it if it got out there. Because let's face it, they're still, like you said, if you combine Keller Williams and Real now, they're still below Compass. And so I think there would have been a big play. The other thing that I think is interesting, Congress came out after that acquisition was closed, and a lot of people had a lot to say about why did we not know about this and how in the world did it get through. So I'm interested to see now that this one I think was released way, way earlier in the process. You know, they still have so much to do. Congress is like...
But I will say it's a lot less threatening. It's not anywhere near the monopoly that, you know, Compass could be accused of. But also, I think the biggest threat that they face is look at the amount of financing. They have such little skin in the game. It's really Morgan Stanley, like, taking on all the risk here.
Yeah. Which, that's another thing that the real stockholders, I think, need to be aware of, is what's going to happen to your shares now that they're, you know, that Morgan Stanley's going to have such a, you know, power position at this brokerage. But I think there's going to be a lot of people in Congress that are going to be like, you know what, we missed out on the Compass Anywhere deal, so we're going to dig our hooks into this one and make it a huge dog and pony show. You know, because let's face it, that's what the politicians like to do, is make a big deal out of it. I think this could get blown up. I think there's a good possibility this whole thing gets blown up some way, or it turns out nowhere near what we've been told as of, you know, April 28th, what this is going to look like in the end.
And then all of this on top of the Tamir Poleg scandal and those lawsuits and everything, like having the balls to acquire Remax on top of that with all that public, like, is he doing it because it's healthy? Like, get away from that publicity?
Yeah. Well, and that's where, maybe that was his whole play. Maybe he took a book out of, CEO Robert Reffkin's book where he was trying to create some distraction, but I don't think it really worked very well because it didn't really make headlines all that much.
I don't know much about many of these CEOs. I know, like, the vibe I get from them. I know what I read about them, and I've created judgments based on that. I have not met I've met a couple of CEOs of competing brokerages, but I have to say, of all the CEOs I'm looking at or reading about, Robert Reffkin, I become more and more fascinated by. Like, that guy is smart. Like I said yesterday, he's playing chess 4 to 5 steps ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that, too, is his background. He has a background in venture capital in the early days. The other thing about him is he's very politically connected. And, and that's why I think he was so careful, because he knew what was going to happen if this thing got out publicly. They were going to face a lot more scrutiny. So I think he is very smart. I think he is playing chess where a lot of people are still playing checkers and trying to figure out what the heck is going on.
Let's switch gears. I just want to slightly touch on this topic because it's not necessarily, super real estate related. However, all real estate agents, I think, are responsible for keeping up with business and financial news, whether it is directly impacting housing rates or not, which is why we were talking about, you know, Jerome Powell out at the Fed and Warsh is in and all these different things, right? But let's talk about AI for a minute, because I wanted to bring this up on the show because I didn't even know this, all right? So opening statements in the legal battle between OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and Tesla CEO Elon Musk begin Tuesday today after a 9-person jury was selected. Also something I didn't know on these types of trials, that like a 9-person jury. Anyway, Musk, who co-founded OpenAI with Altman, I did not know that. Did you know that, Josh?
I knew he was involved early on. I didn't know he was a co-founder, but I did know he was involved in some way, shape, or form.
So he alleges that President Greg Brockman and others, Elon Musk alleges that he and Altman, he being Greg, and Altman went back on a pledge to keep OpenAI a non-profit. So I actually fucking love that Musk is like going for the throat on this. If it is in fact true, right? The trial is going to unfold in 2 phases, with the jury's role limited to an advisory verdict. I found that also very interesting. So like, can a judge be paid off to like make the final call? I don't know. I mean, everybody has a price. Musk is pursuing up to $134 billion in damages, which he said he intends to donate back to OpenAI's charitable efforts. So I wanted to bring this up because I had no idea that Musk co-founded it. I remember when it was a nonprofit. I don't know when it stopped being a nonprofit. I don't know all the politics behind AI. You know, we all concentrate on the fact that we're all fucked as like a society, like Terminator's gonna happen, all that other stuff. But I found this business side of it quite fascinating.
I think it's interesting too because, you know, once again, we have 2 behemoths in the business world that are just going at it. You know, and it reminds me of, I forget who said this, but it's just rich people arguing over who can get richer, you know?
Yeah.
And what's crazy about it is it captivates people and it catches attention. And, you know, I think the lesson here is if you want attention, just sue somebody, because you'll get in front of a bunch of people if you do.
I'm curious, producer Brian, if you have any thoughts on this topic.
So I kind of agree with Josh where it's like, yeah, rich people getting richer. I don't know enough about everybody else involved in this, but Elon has obviously got, you know, many irons in the fire between Tesla and SpaceX, and I forget what the battery company is called, but he's got like a company that sets batteries up at houses so you can store solar electricity there. The Boring Company, like everything he's involved in, because I saw all these things before, and it wasn't until like an article or a tweet or something said like, well, if Musk wants to go to Mars, what would you need? It's like, well, you need rockets. You would need like AI cars to drive people around. You would need like things that could build themselves and drilling underground. So like everything he's doing here on Earth is like towards this one goal of how could we build a society on Mars. And I'm like, wow, like that's an incredibly like wide vision to have all these things that look completely unrelated, at least to me, on Earth, but they're all focused on this same goal of the hardest thing to get to Mars is people. The fewer number of people, the more like autonomous robots that can do things that don't need to be fed. You can do much more labor there without the human part, you know, with needing food and, you know, exercise and rest and sleep and all that. Like if a robot can just work on Mars and build things while humans are, you know, not involved, that's genius. So like everybody else, so like I tend to give him a big benefit of the doubt as far as like when he's saying you're not doing the right thing, he gets a lot of leeway from me in believing he's, you know, got our backs as like humanity because he's going for that next goal.
I agree. I think a lot of people, I don't know what everybody's problem with him is. I'm a huge Elon Musk fan, and I think I was a big fan ever since he bought Twitter, turned it into X, and then basically that's, I feel, our only social media outlet that we actually have free speech on, so I was going to make that joke. Well, we also need social media in Mars, but I just have a question for you guys. What would it take for you, to go live on Mars? And you can never come back, you're going to go live on Mars.
The big thing for me was can I take just a tablet that I have my books and a whole bunch of media on? Because I already am pretty much a shut-in here. I've thought about hey, I'm not in an astronaut physical fitness level, but if you pay to feed me and have a personal trainer to get me in shape to go to Mars, sign me up. I don't have any big qualms there. Also, I want to take an AR-15 because there might be aliens. So.
Or Russians.
Yeah, Brian just wants his guns.
And
just
books
one.
to read.
I mean, I think that's reasonable.
So, I think for me, I don't think I would. I guess for me, I feel like there's still so much that I haven't seen on Earth. Why the heck do I need to travel to another planet? I got so many things I want to do here first. And to me, it just seems I get what he's trying to do and push progress and all that type of stuff. And I think it will help, obviously, even if we never make it to Mars, the innovation and stuff in the process to try to get there will always help us. I think personally, eventually he's going to do it. I think, he's smart. He's obviously got the ability, the funds. I think it's going to take longer than what he said. But I think eventually we're going to do it. But for me, it's I don't get what the point is. I think there's a monetary incentive for Elon. I think he's got some big dreams of, mining Mars and resources and that type of stuff. But yeah, for me, I'm I have no desire. I just don't get it. So
I don't think
would,
that
period.
we will see Mars become inhabitable in our lifetime. But the older I get, the less I am attached to Earth. I'm I kind of already lived here. I think I would. I think I'd go to Mars. Just like Brian was saying, as long as I had enough entertainment to mentally sustain me, mentally grow, have books, whatever, on an iPad, unlimited, whatever. As long as I had, a reasonable amount of safety, assurance of safety, I think I'd be up for that adventure.
I'd be okay with visiting, but I don't think I'd ever want to live there.
No, I'm just the older I get, the less I'm well, I kind of already been there, done that with Earth. There's really nothing left for me here. Let's see let's rally at Mars.
Yeah. Well, part of it is there's a lot of stuff going on Earth too, so there's that.
Yeah, exactly. We could totally ruin a whole new planet, and be the first to do so. So I found this to be kind of fascinating as well. Topic 2, Hardy Brokers appeal the NAR mandatory membership ruling and EXP files to reincorporate in Texas. So Riz Media's court report broke that Hardy plaintiffs filed an appeal on the most recent dismissal of their challenge to mandatory NAR membership for MLS access. In the same edition, EXP World Holdings is moving forward with a shareholder vote to reincorporate in Texas, pulling its corporate domicile out of Washington State, which I found to be incredible. They've always been headquartered there. Both items hit the same morning the Real and Remax deal was being digested. Two stories that look completely unrelated are telling the same story. NAR keeps winning the mandatory membership argument in trial courts, and it keeps getting appealed. I can't believe they keep winning, but part of me believes, I can't believe they keep winning, but the other part of me understands. It's almost if you want to join my club, this is what it takes to be in my club. I should be able to pretty much set the rules, right?
Yeah.
You can either be a member of my club or not. Here are the rules. It's not mandatory that you be in my club, but if I can regulate these other people that are in my club to tell you that you have to be in my club or you have to get the fuck out of their brokerage. That's what
Yeah.
they're doing, essentially. And so I'm all about like less government involvement. You know, if I'm looking at it as a club, I understand. I don't think that it should be regulated in that manner. That being said, this club has gotten so out of control that it really has become the identity of our license. I'm not a realtor, but I guarantee you if I walked around, consumers and agents in this community would still call me a realtor.
Well, and I think the first thing with this is the EXP move doesn't surprise me because the state of Washington just passed that millionaires tax. And so one of the big issues that the state of Washington is having is a bunch of these huge corporations are moving because the people that CEOs and high earners that live in that state, I think Washington, it was like, I don't know, some crazy, if you're a millionaire, your tax percentage went through the roof. And this is a state, Washington doesn't have income tax. They used to be only a sales tax state. So crazy, who would have thunk it would have happened? But as soon as you raise this tax, all the millionaires leave? Well, of course. So that one doesn't necessarily, make me flinch a whole lot. But I do think this NAR thing is interesting because it's almost like we have two different systems here where, it's like you have this group over here that's like, I don't like the way things are going, but I don't want to change it. And then you have this other group over here that are just like have their head in the sand and like don't have an opinion on it. So I think the whole NAR thing is going to be interesting to see how that changes long term. And it seems like once this leaves the state of Texas, it's going to become a much bigger deal. And I think it will, because eventually these appeals are going to work their way to, the circuit courts, and then they're going to work their way to the Supreme Courts if they keep getting appealed like this all the time.
And what's interesting to me and what I feel is like you should not have to pay dues to a private trade group to access a public-facing listing service. NAR has dressed up mandatory membership like as basically this regular standard for over 30 years, and these standards are real. The mandatory membership is tied to like an ML, like a moat that you have to cross to reach the MLS. It's not a standard. And as for EXP moving to Texas, I mean, good for them. Every CEO with a clean balance sheet should be looking at a map right now. And I'm the first to say, people ask, who are you targeting, for your brokerage or where your growth is and everything? And I'm the first to say red states. Why? Because they're easier. That's why.
And that's where people are moving to. Just look at, that's where real estate is transacting right now.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we need to harp on the Stair thing. He is being held in federal custody after his hearing yesterday, so more to follow on that. Now, do you want to talk about the Trump administration kind of cracking down? They're cracking down on a lot of interesting things. From what I heard, I don't know, was it you that told me this, Josh, about the PPP loan audit?
No,
from 2020?
it wasn't me.
Yeah, they went back and audited all the PPP loans and have uncovered like billions, like I'm talking like in the tens to hundreds of, Brian, I don't know if you want to look it up. I should have had this prepared, but it was like $23 billion or something that they've already flagged in PPP fraud, and they are going after all those people from 2020. But this is a separate issue, something else that they're cracking down on. Housing Wire filed a piece overnight reporting that the Trump administration is scrutinizing the LA wildfire recovery process with attention on whether mortgage servicers and federal disaster programs have moved fast enough on borrower relief claims and rebuild financing. I fucking love that. I love that they're holding these companies accountable. Brian went through a fucking insurance issue. The story comes more than a year after those January 2025 fires and lands and wildfire rebuilding lending is a 2026 election year flashpoint. But this is a federal versus state versus servicer fight, and it's wrapped in like the disaster recovery package. So California already runs its own insurance backstop, which, I mean, they'd have to. It's fucking California. It's a disaster of a state with all those natural disasters and everything. But mortgage servicers have their own forbearance playbooks. Okay, so let's see what we're looking at here. Low balls, yeah, outright denials. I mean, how do you feel about this, Brian? You went through some bullshit with your insurance company.
Yeah, a short story on that. Like, water destroyed my kitchen and basement. I filed the claim. They called me back after, a month or two and were like, hey, we need some more information. Yep, okay, fine. And then, I waited another, 6 months while I couldn't use the kitchen in my house.
Mind you, yeah, he had no kitchen in his home.
And I called them back and I was like, hey, what's the status? And they looked me up like, oh, it looks like the person who was handling this left the company and didn't pass it off to anybody. All right. So I got that whole process started again. And was it 2 or 3 years before I finally got the check? So I was basically eating out of a microwave and delivery the whole time. And then, luckily knew somebody whose dad was a contractor, so they got a really good kitchen. Sandi helped me, find good options for cabinet colors and countertops and everything. The basement got mostly finished, got, a nice new kitchen out of it, but for 3 years, I basically had no kitchen in my house.
And the whole time, I just remember, the whole time you're expected to still make payments on this home, whether you have a kitchen or not. That's not the mortgage lender's fault. And so they're all tied in together. You're the one that got fucked, but you still have to pay.
Yeah. Well,
and that's on such a smaller scale than people that completely lost their homes and all their belongings.
Yeah. I know somebody that lost their house in not this most recent California wildfire, but one from a few years ago. And it was a disaster. I mean, the first offer they got for their insurance company didn't even cover the value of the land. And they had a very, very nice home that they had built. And it was like a 3-year fight. And the whole time they were still having to pay a mortgage on a house they weren't living in. They were in a rental. It was just a disaster. So, I am excited. I think I'm all for small government too. But I do think that this is one of those issues where there needs to be a little bit more regulation.
Somebody needs to step in and help these people.
And I think part of the problem too is California is their requirements for insurance companies are just ridiculous. So what I've been told is there's a lot of insurance companies that just won't go to California because they're we don't want to play ball there, which limits the competition. So the few companies that are there can just do whatever they want. And that's where I think the real problem lies is we really don't have, when you only have 2 options, you don't really have a free economy. There's no competition, and the consumer's the one that's going to get screwed.
And that's not even them trying to, be a monopoly. They still have a business to run. It's, I don't even think that insurance company is inherently evil. I think that they're still if we're taking on this massive amount of risk that no one else is willing to take on, then we better be making money from it. I understand their perspective, but I do not understand what you just told me about that offer not even covering the value of the land. That's incredible.
That reminds me of the riots in 2020 where, cities are being burned down depending on which side you want to believe. But what I heard was this guy's business was burned down and destroyed, and insurance didn't even cover what it would take to clean up the debris and destruction, much less rebuild the building. And it's well, that guy's life is now ruined forever.
Yeah.
That was absolutely wild. Just ridiculous. So there were a couple of other stories that actually got released overnight. Let me see if any of these are worth. So industry veterans reacting to the whole, I'm never going to not call it Real Max now. Sorry. People talking about their different opinions on everything. I've been watching all of the reels, and frankly, not like only one of them has impressed me so far. It's all, again, a bunch of regurgitated garbage, people afraid to be opinionated or take a stand. And so I'm learning to follow people who are actually forward thinking, actually going to have a backbone. But you know what else I noticed, Josh, is some of those people are like Canadians or people not even in our country. Like, come on, America, get a backbone.
They're jumping on the attention bandwagon, you know? It's a hot topic now, so they have an opinion. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the posts I've seen, I'll call it like milk toast. Like, it's just no opinion, you know, a lot of it. I read a lot yesterday that none of it made sense. Like, there was one post that I read where this guy was trying to talk about the stock and how it was going to be so good for everybody. And the post didn't even make any sense. You could tell he had oblivious to what's going on. And, you know, it almost was like, dude, you don't even own shares in any of these companies. You don't know what is going on. But he had an opinion. I think the most interesting one I read was actually from, and this guy had an opinion about it because he is actually a small regional brokerage owner down, I believe, in North Carolina or South Carolina. And he was talking about, you know, when the Compass Anywhere merger happened, he had a ton of agents that were Anywhere agents that came to his brokerage because they were so fed up with being at this national brokerage where they felt like, you know, at the blink of the drop of a hat, somebody could come in and just change their whole business. And so he picked up a bunch of agents, and his whole thing was, I'm going to do the same thing with this now too, because there's a lot of RE/MAX agents who didn't sign up for this that want no part in it. And I think that's one big difference between this merger and the Compass merger is the Compass merger, for the most part, were mostly all kind of franchise model brokerages, which kind of fit much more into the Compass model. But now with this, you're having an MLM brokerage by what has historically been the most anti-MLM brokerage in the country. And a lot of people at RE/MAX were like very much against EXP and Real. I talked to an EXP recruiter a couple of years ago, and he said he wouldn't even call RE/MAX agents because they were like brainwashed just to, you know, not listen, which I don't necessarily disagree with them. But yeah, to fold them into
who benefits from this, Josh?
Well, I mean, the people, anytime there's an acquisition, it's the people at the top.
Exactly. You know, these agents are just fucking pawns on both Real's side and RE/MAX's side. I think RE/MAX execs benefited the most, you know, from this whole thing. But, you know, these Real agents acting like they're, you know, a part of it, or, you know, it's just, I cringe. I fucking cringe.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is we're in this like arms race with real estate brokerages where we're touting these huge numbers, you know, oh, we have 180, like all the Real posts that I saw were, you know, we're going to be 180,000 agents strong. What I don't think the normal consumer gets about this whole thing is if you have 180,000 agents that don't sell a single home, you will make $0 as a brokerage. I mean, you'll make probably some monthly fees and stuff, but your number of agents doesn't matter. But yet, that's what, especially when it comes to investors, that's what these brokerages are touting for their value.
Which is why it's a fucking house of cards. Like,
it's not propped up by anything of actual value. And that's, you know, part of it. If I think about this, if I'm at Real and I think, wait a second, we've just, I think, more than doubled our agent count in the matter of a few months, the infrastructure is not going to be there. Your support at Real is going to go in the tank, which talking to some agents, now I've talked to some.
It already has, yeah.
Yeah, some Real agents love it. But I've talked to some Real agents that have left because they went to an AI broker system and they just don't like it because there's no support. And I'm like, so that company now is going to double in size in a couple months and all of a sudden they're going to fix that? Like, I don't think so.
I'm excited to bring these topics to real estate agents, to business owners, because again, nobody ever did this for me. I had to go scrub a bunch of different news sources to find these topics to bring to the show. So, and again, here at My Real Estate Show, we actually have a background. We're going to give you our fucking opinions, you know, whether people like them or not, whether they agree with them or not. At least you know where you stand with when you're talking to us. I think that people need to feel that. Do you have any final words before I close this out?
I will second that. I think at the end of the day, you are much better off to have an opinion and something that you believe in. I don't care what industry you're in or what we're talking about, than just to sit on the sidelines and not take a side. So I'll leave it with that one.
Amen. So that is the show. The big three of real estate just got a new face. Brokers in Texas are punching NAR again. The Milwaukee brokerage owner is still in a cell. The credit score door just opened. The administration is pushing back on LA wildfire recovery. The lenders are clawing each other in court, and we will keep telling you exactly what is happening and what we think about it. So hit follow, hit subscribe, and we will see you live tomorrow, noon Central Standard Time, unfiltered.
See you tomorrow.